Hey, good afternoon. 407 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we'll be joined by a former Blackhawk crew chief, Mark McEathron will be with us, and we're going to chat with him about all of the latest that we're learning about this crash this week and what he makes of these new details. And then E.J. Antoni, our economist, joins us at 5:30. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630 WMAL. By now, you likely know the Democrats have never been less popular, according to available survey data. Right now, they have the highest unfavorability rating that Quinnipiac has ever detected for their party. 57% unfavorable. Just 31% of voters have a favorable view. All of them have hit their head. Meanwhile, the Republican Party has a 43% favorability rating among voters, a 45% unfavorability rating. Just, once again, a sign of the polarized world we live in, where Democrats refuse to say they like Republicans, even if they secretly do. And then there's this. What are the Democrats doing with that information? If you were that unpopular, if you were less popular than foot fungus, don't you think you would be working to change that? Well, right now, the DNC is trying to elect a new chairman, or what do they call it, chairperson? Here's a sample of how their candidate forum went yesterday. The moderator in this audio, Jonathan Capehart of the Washington Post.
In this round, so I'm going to, I have a show of hands. How many of you believe that racism and misogyny played a role in Vice President Harris's defeat?
All of them.
Okay. So that's good. You all pass.
In other words, nothing is going to change. For more on this, let's bring in David Strom. He's an associate editor over at Hot Air. David, good to have you back with us.
Always a pleasure, Vince.
So nobody likes the Democrats, and their playbook is let's just keep doing the same thing?
I think even more than that. I think the consensus among the activist class is that they need to double down. Now, I tend to distinguish between the sort of political operatives for whom this is a business and the activist class, which, basically drives the narrative of the Democratic Party. And I think that the people who really want to win elections know they're in deep trouble, but they've hitched their wagon to truly insane people.
Yeah, but the people that from this audio, these are the people who are all vying to become the next chairperson of the DNC. Yep. That's the group that's supposed to win elections. In other words, they should have the clearest eyes and be less radical. And yet, I'm not hearing that. In fact, I was clicking through this hours-long hearing, and there were all sorts of ridiculous moments. Here's one, for example, where some random DNC person asks, how are they going to include more transgender people in their operations?
Okay, the next person is Carol Abney, who is a Tennessee DNC member. Go ahead, Carol.
We all know that red states need extra help, so my question is for all of you. For the past 16 years, the transgender community has only gotten one at-large seat each time. Will you pledge to appoint more than one transgender person to an at-large seat, and will you commit to making sure those appointments reflect the gender and ethnic diversity of the transgender community?
I mean, what? They are so far off, David, from addressing, what is the thing that they keep talking about? The price of eggs? I don't think this has anything to do with that.
Yeah, well, which tells you that the people, the inmates are running the asylum. Yes, these people are supposed to be concerned about winning elections, but they aren't, which is what's panicking the consultant class. Although for them, all they need is the gravy train. I think what we're seeing here is what happened to the Labour Party for a long time in the UK, which is just absolute capture by the activist class, and who are fringe. I mean, these are really fringe people, but they're the ground troops. They're the people who have control over, what the DNC does.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's just an incredible problem that the Democrats have. And what's happened is that even Democrat elected officials who are so heavily concentrated in blue states are just as crazy.
Yeah, it sure seems like it. One of the questions last night came from Simone Sanders, longtime Democrat activist, MSNBC person, who pointed out that there was at least one ad in particular that caught the Democrats completely flat-footed during Kamala Harris's ill-fated campaign. Here is the ad. This is the ad she's referring to.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
It's hard to believe, but it's true. Even the liberal media was shocked Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners and illegal aliens.
Every transgender inmate would have access.
Kamala's for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
That ad running like crazy because it was so devastating and effective. Here's Simone Sanders asking the panel about it last night.
Because I want to follow up on something that Jonathan is touching on, and I want to ask you all a very specific question. You've all talked about the messaging, Big Tent, completely understand that. But there are some very specific targeted attacks that Democrats that has been lobbed on Democrats, particularly in this last cycle, and I don't think they'll be letting up anytime soon. In October of 2024, a large part, about 1/3 of Trump's advertising budget, went specifically to this one ad. It was about gender-changing surgeries for a small number of transgender, incarcerated, undocumented immigrants. These particular ads ended with the line, "Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you." Governor O'Malley, I want to start with you. How should Democrats respond to this attack?
We need to respond forcefully. We need to respond right away.
Specifically?
Well,
what should you say in response is my question.
What we should say is that in our country, we believe in the dignity of every person. What we should say in our country is that, thank you.
So we should fight for illegal alien transgender prisoners? What? They're not changing, are they, David?
Oh, no. And in fact, I mean, you see, even in purple states like Arizona, Democrats like Katie Hobbs, who are going out there, on the illegal immigration issue and just kicking the voters in the teeth. And, they really have painted themselves into this ideological corner because the people who they've been electing are true believers. And, that one ad, the Democrats knew that it was moving voters. It moved between 2% and 3% of voters from Kamala Harris to Donald Trump. And they can't abandon it because they truly believe that this is the civil rights issue of our times. It's just insane.
Sure. And it, right, that ad, the reason it's so effective is because it instantly conveys how ridiculous the left is.
Yeah.
And there's no really escaping it. You see that I guarantee, if Kamala Harris has any decency anywhere within her, she saw that ad and thought, oh, crap, they got me.
I don't know if she has any decency. I mean, we live in a country where about 1 out of 8 people in women's prisons is a man. That's what the Democrats have done.
Yes.
Even some of the most, how could you be more vulnerable? You're literally caged up with sex offenders, and the Democrats say that this is justice. It's just, it's incomprehensible to most people. In fact, I think it went on this long because most people didn't believe anyone that was that insane.
But, you know, but unfortunately, the insane population you're referring to that is okay with this, much of it lives within the sound of my voice. We're in the D.C. Radio market, and that brings me to my next topic, which is that we have people in and around Washington, D.C. who are furious at the efficiency and speed of the current Trump administration. They're angry about this. Tell me, what's going on here, David Strom?
Well, you know, what's happening here, and we had indications that this was coming. There was a poll done by the Napolitan Institute, Scott Rasmussen's organization, that showed about almost half of government managers were prepared to resist Trump. Actually, you know, basically not obey orders. We have created an administrative state that thinks that they should run things. They're the technocrats, and they live in this bizarre world where because all they talk to is each other, where they just don't connect with reality anymore. They certainly don't connect with the average American. I mean, if you had said that a president like Trump, in fact, I mean, I don't know what you thought in 2015, but in 2015, I thought Trump, was a joke candidate. And certainly in 2012, when we had Mitt Romney, to go from Mitt Romney to Donald Trump, that is a rebellion against the establishment. People turn to Trump because they see this establishment as fundamentally broken, fundamentally corrupt, and as hating the average American person. And that's because they are corrupt. They do hate us. And, I mean, what is it? 94% of people in Washington, D.C. vote Democrat. It's insane.
Yeah. No, and you're right. I mean, one of the big reasons President Trump gets elected in the first place is because he is so loathed by the establishment that the American people said, we're sending him in. You don't like him? Good. I'm with him. He's on my side. And to your point about 2015, President Trump had flirted with presidential runs a number of times on other parties' tickets in the past. So if I'm being honest with myself, in 2015, I'm just wondering, is that what this is again? And of course, it wasn't. It was something completely different. And I'll give great credit to my late father-in-law, John O'Brien, who for many years said, who should be president? Donald Trump. He said that for many years, and he just happened to be ahead of his time. He knew exactly what was coming, and boy, did it come. Hey, David Strom, thank you, sir. Always so good to talk to you. Really appreciate your time today.
My favorite radio host, Vince.
You are the man. Love hot air. Thank you, David.
Racism has not gone away since 20 people of African descent came upon these shores at Jamestown, Virginia in 1619, and it's going to require us to think and behave in a new way. It is systemic, it is structural. When it comes to addressing diversity, equity, inclusion, access, and belonging, that is for all people of the United States. That must come across the voting line as well. This is everyone's America. Our story has a new form of glory that must come to our shores as well.
That woman, Quintessa Hathaway, one of the candidates to become the next DNC chair. I'm rooting for her. She's an early favorite for me. So that that party continues to double down on the bigotry and delusions that led them into the political wilderness in the first place. Man, oh man, that was part of that ridiculous candidate forum yesterday. Equally ridiculous is the fact that not only were they there, everyone's going crazy on stage, off stage they were going crazy too, protesters interrupting. Yeah, stop protesting us. Protest the Republicans.
I think it's important to say here, we respect people's opinions.
Don't you love that liberal, by the way? I don't know who that is specifically. I just mean that person. They always show up at these events. It's like one person who's like, all right, everyone, settle down. We respect all voices. We welcome diverse opinions. Giving this like stupid moral lecture while they're getting like spit in their face. So that was going well. And then Jonathan Capehart, the Washington Post guy, the MSNBC guy, he was sticking to the script too.
All right, so Faz, I'll come to you on this one. Given that President Trump ran and he openly and consistently employed racist and misogynistic rhetoric on the campaign trail.
What?
We cannot ignore the role of fear and hate in
Cite it, Mr. Journalist.
President Harris's defeat. How would you, as DNC chair, handle voter? All right, so
yeah, okay, yeah, Jonathan Capehart. It was an openly racist campaign, obviously, and everyone nods in agreement. Does he still work at the Washington Post? Jeff Bezos is the guy who owns that, right? The one who's now sucking up to Donald Trump. I got a new way you can do that. Stay with us. Ahead, we'll talk to a Blackhawk pilot, former Blackhawk crew chief. Mark McEathron will join us. That's ahead. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, the economist E.J. Antoni will join us at 5:30. We will talk to him about President Trump's tariff strategy and federal workers getting an offer of a buyout. We'll talk about the economic impact of all of it. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We continue to learn more and more about the accident over the Potomac this week between that Blackhawk helicopter and that American Airlines flight from Wichita, Kansas. Helicopter traffic in the vicinity of Reagan National has been shut down by the Trump administration now. But as we look back this week at the findings that kind of led up to this horrific accident, we're learning more and more. Joining us now to discuss all of it is Mark McEathron. He's a former Blackhawk crew chief and the host of the Bearded Federalist Show. Mark, good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, thank you very much. Excited to talk about this.
We got some information today from the New York Times. They claim from kind of the preliminary investigation that found that the helicopter was flying well above that 200 feet ceiling that it should have been at as it was passing by Reagan National Airport, and that it was apparently also off of its course. It was outside of its approved flight path by as much as a half of a mile. How much do you think that all of that might play a role in what we saw this week?
Oh, massively. When it's out of position, out of place, that's a big factor. It can happen really easily, though. Pilots, they'll talk about the Blackhawk flying that. It's like flying a Ferrari. It's just real sensitive. When they make a turn, they'll tell you, just think about which direction you want to go, and it'll go. It's that sensitive. So all of us, we've ridden a bicycle and tried to look over our shoulder at something, and you'll find yourself drifting off the sidewalk or whatnot. In your car, you look at something on the side of the road, you'll drift over the lane. Now imagine that in a giant aircraft that is very sensitive to maneuvers. You could be out of position very easily. Yeah.
So we're told there were three soldiers on board that flight who had various tasks. What are the tasks of the soldiers that are on that flight, and should one of them be scanning the sky for this kind of thing, for a plane that's approaching so closely?
Absolutely. So aircrew coordination is the name of the game, and so we coordinate the various tasks on there. And we will back each other up. So there's redundancies. For example, a pilot would do a fuel check. Crew chief will also do a fuel check to back them up on that, so our numbers match. So things like that happen. This aircraft was coming out of a refuel, and it was getting up to altitude and doing its thing. When you're leaving there, one pilot's going to be doing a checklist, going over the checklist. And that's literally attached to their thigh. So they would be looking down into the aircraft onto their leg, reading off that checklist. The other pilot, most often, will be doing checks on the rotor speed, on the engine torque, and engine speed as well. Those are all on the panel inside the aircraft. So you can have both pilots looking inside the aircraft, not looking outside. The crew chief's job, one of their primary jobs, is airspace surveillance and obstacle avoidance. That's literally what we do. Now, the Blackhawk flies with its nose down, and so the pilots do not have a good view of what's up and behind or off to the sides of it. They can see down really good. It's designed to deal with issues below you. It's not designed to deal with issues above you. So the crew chief's job is to look above and below and look around there. However, with only one crew chief on, they're sitting on the right side of that aircraft. This impact was off from the left side. And so that crew chief would never have had visibility off from that other side. So paint that all together.
So it's standard, I'm sorry, just to be clear, it would be standard with one crew chief to have them sit on the right side of the aircraft?
Yes. Yep. That's the most common one. Honestly, the crew chief can actually choose which side they want to sit on. But most commonly, we do choose the right side if we're only flying with one crew chief.
Yes. And also that would kind of make sense given the air traffic that they would be expecting, because the right side would be the side that Reagan National was on as they were heading down the river. And additionally, most of the air traffic would be probably on the right side, or at least right ahead of the helicopter.
Absolutely. Yep. That's exactly where I want to be positioned myself.
Okay. So when you see the video, we're getting a couple of videos that have come out now of the midair collision, including some footage out of CNN this morning that's a lot clearer than most of what we've seen. When you look at it, what do you detect?
So there's a number of things. This was a night vision goggle evaluation flight. So one was evaluating the other pilot for night vision proficiency. There's a lot of lights, and those goggles all see lights as the same. And so it's quite possible to lose that other aircraft in there. What I see happening is the American Airlines was going towards runway 1. It requested a deviation to 33. That put it off to the side. And when the pilots acknowledge that they see the air traffic control asked the pilots, do you have an aircraft in sight? They acknowledged seeing an aircraft in sight. It looked like they saw flight 3130, which was back behind the one that they crashed into. So that's what it looks like, is they confirmed the visibility of one that was off in the distance. And the problem there is air traffic control did not really communicate to the pilots where to put their eyes. We need to know the distance, we need to know the direction, and we need to know the altitude of what to look for. And part of the reason they did that, though, is the air crew themselves, they requested the ability to manage the airspace avoidance themselves. So they took that responsibility on them to avoid the aircraft, but they were looking at the wrong aircraft. It's pretty clear to me that that's what was going on there.
In the video, it appears that the plane is kind of banking. It's lifting. It's like towards the left, and at the same time, the helicopter is approaching, as you say, nose down, and it's almost like a perfect combination of blind spots between the two vehicles. Do you think that's
absolutely
accurate?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and especially if the pilots were looking, in doing their duties inside the aircraft, and the crew chief was trying to handle the airspace above and below from the wrong side. Yeah, it's a perfect blind spot.
The one thing that I've seen online a lot, because just like everything, people have all sorts of conspiracy theories. They have all sorts of speculation about what happened. But some people are claiming that they think that the video looks like the helicopter intentionally rammed into this plane. That there was something intentional about this movement. But my impression is, and you can tell me, having been a Blackhawk crew chief, is that if you were intentionally trying to pull something like this off, it strikes me almost impossible to be able to hit that space at the right moment to successfully achieve that. That it just looked like two planes that didn't see each other.
I've never met a pilot talented enough to do that. I can't see that level. You would have to, especially from the distance away that the Blackhawk was had put their straight path into it.
Yeah,
that was a long ways away, and for that to happen, no, I reject the idea that it was intentional.
Yeah,
it just doesn't add up.
No, it did. It didn't to me either. It was good to hear it from an expert. I was like, I don't think that's even possible given the circumstances that we're witnessing here. Okay, so this is, I started the conversation on what appears to be the helicopters issues, that it was flying much too high. I was talking to another helicopter pilot earlier who has flown this mission or on that route thousands of times and saying, no, you can stay below 200 feet pretty easily. How does the Blackhawk get above that 200 feet level? How does it get way up to even 300 feet or so?
There's a number of ways that could happen. It could be anything from just a lack of situational awareness. Like I said, they were doing other things at the time and hadn't noticed their position in the sky.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
That could happen. It could be environmental factors. There could be like a helicopter is so delicately balanced. When we do sling loads and we come in to pick up the sling, there's a crew below us that is trying to hook up the sling. They literally can put their hand on the aircraft and move it kind of into position. It is that delicately balanced. So you get a thermal or a wind or something like that, we really notice that in those aircraft, much more than the fixed wings do. There's a number of factors that could do that.
But wouldn't it stand to reason? What you just described at the top of our conversation is that as you take off after refueling, the pilots up front are going through a checklist of items as they begin. Wouldn't it stand to reason that if you're in that congested of an airspace that you forego some of those things in order to stay concentrated on the very dangerous airspace you're traversing?
Yes and no. So it's a well-orchestrated environment, airspace is, in that they were relying on air traffic control to help them clear that airspace. When I say clear, I don't mean redirect or anything, but just where are things at? And so they believed that they had visibility of the aircraft that was in question. It was the wrong one.
Right.
And so if they had the right one, if that one that they saw was the one that air traffic control was talking about, there would have been no problem. It's not really issue normally with that. I just think what happened was there was a bad communication between the aircraft, air traffic control, and a lack of eyes on the blind side of the aircraft.
We're talking to Mark McEathron, a former Blackhawk crew chief, host of the Bearded Federalist Show. Mark, how would you fix this? What should we do going forward?
Two things right off the bat. I definitely would have a second crew chief on any of the flights in those kind of areas. If you have high traffic going on, I want more sets of eyes on that bird. That second crew chief absolutely would have seen that aircraft. The other thing I would want is air traffic control to tell the pilots where to put their eyes. Just let the crew know where to look. We need distance, we need direction, and we need altitude. So don't ask a question of, hey, do you have this aircraft in sight? It's, hey, do you have the aircraft off your 11 o'clock, 3 miles at 1,100 feet? Like, give us that. And then require it to be confirmed back. Have the crew say, Roger, we have aircraft at such distance, such elevation, just feed that back. So it's a two-way handoff.
All right, so the solution is more eyeballs and fewer assumptions. That's a good way to fix this. Man, it's really a tragedy. Right now, they've shut down those routes that are near Reagan National that the helicopters normally take. Do you think those routes should be reopened at any point, or should they figure out a way to go around it from now on?
I think once they finish their investigation, reopening it, as long as they have the corrections in place as far as mitigating this, I would want to, as far as the military aircraft going back through that route, I would want to wait till the NTSB report is released. They always put really good suggestions for fixing things and mitigating issues in those reports. And so I would wait till that comes out before I send the Blackhawks back through there. But I think they should open it back up to commercial.
All right. Mark McEathron, former Blackhawk crew chief, hosted the Bearded Federalist Show. Thank you for your wisdom on this subject, sir. Everybody's trying to get some answers, and I'm grateful that you could give us a couple. Thank you very much, sir. All right, let's go to the phones. I've got Philip calling in from Annandale now on line 1. Hello, Philip. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
My pleasure.
There's a lot of questions about this offer to resign, and the answers are very unclear. And I think
for federal employees, just so people understand what you're talking about, I didn't set it up. Just to president, the White House offered buyouts to federal employees, saying, "Go ahead, you can leave, and you'll be paid out through September 30th of this year if you do."
Yes, but they aren't. He might verbalize buyout, but they're not using that word in any of the letters that have gone out. Mm-hmm. And OPM is not using that word buyout. So what's happened was that what the OPM website is not matching on the facts what the resignation letter is offering. So you're not really expected to work during the resignation period, but the deferred resignation does not say that anywhere and suggests actually the opposite. So the language is really, you got to read it really carefully. That in the offer says if you accept the offer of a deferred resignation, you'll keep your pay and benefits until the end of September.
Right.
Whatever your workload is, it gives the government the ability to change your duties before that resignation. So it isn't like if I sign it by February 6th, Thursday, then I don't have to go to work and then I'm just getting paid until the 30th of September, and my annual leave is accruing, my sick leave is accruing. So a lot of people carry over 240 hours of leave each year. That's the maximum. Mm-hmm. And the reason a lot of people retire, they do retire, and they do accept the $25,000 buyouts that they normally offer, is that by December 31st, they try to store up 240 plus all that leave that year. So they have like a lump sum payment of 400 hours plus their $25,000 buyout. This is nothing like that. It's not stating it. Let's put it that way. But Caroline Leavitt did say we want everybody to enjoy an 8-month vacation. But that's not what the letter is saying. And the facts are not matching. The OPM facts are not matching what the letter says. So that's all the confusion.
Got it. All right. So this is a call to the White House, hopefully who's listening, who can offer you the clarity you deserve as you navigate making a decision about this. The headlines today include ABC saying that federal workers are told that offer to get paid through September if they resign is both valid and lawful. The White House's Office of Personnel and Management had already told workers on Tuesday that if they quit by February 6th, they get paid through September 30th. Employment lawyers have been questioning whether or not the offer was lawful because Congress, not the White House, is responsible for authorizing these federal paychecks. On Friday morning, senior officials at all the various agencies have been sending memos to staffers assuring them that the offers are indeed real. So we'll keep pursuing some more clarity on this, Philip. I think you deserve it. And federal workers just want to make a good decision here. More on that topic coming up. We will be talking with our economist, E.J. Antoni, in the next hour. Also, President Trump himself has been addressing this past hour, just speaking from the White House. I've got that audio for you next as the president answers way more questions than Joe Biden, that is, did in his entire term in office.